Here we are. Hello, Renegade. It is Harmony again, Trauma Transcendence Leader for Entrepreneurs. I'm happy to bring to you day two. What's your ACE? The impact of adverse childhood experiences on the brain. I hope that yesterday you were able to download the handout, the assessment that I mentioned to you and left for you in the resources section. And now you have an idea of what your ACE score is. That will be useful to you as we continue. So, today we're going to talk about, let's see here if I can, we're going to talk about ACEs and their impact on the brain, certainly the developing brain, but overall on the brain. And we're going to talk about why most healing work doesn't create sustainable change. Healing work meaning maybe psychotherapy that you've gone to for some years, or self help books that you may have tried, other webinars that you might have gotten strategies from, coaching, business coaching for sure. Why this sort of healing work generally does not create sustainable change. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, I'm going to give you solutions. So let's get into it. ACEs and their impact on the brain. Got a little ahead of myself there. So basically, um, as we have adverse childhood experiences, or as we did have them, they had particular effects on our brain. They actually change the structure and the function of the brain as it's developing. And that is one of the primary reasons, as I understand it, as to why having a high ACE load is, um, I forget the word, corresponds to having poorer health outcomes, the higher ACE load you have. So, the majority of the time, when entrepreneurs, or people in general, of course, but I'm talking to you as an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are, we've experienced a lot of, or several adverse childhood experiences, several ACEs. Now, as adults, we're walking around in something called sympathetic dominance. And if I'll leave you a video in the resources, what is sympathetic dominance? But basically, long story short, that is fight or flight mode. So our body is walking around in survival mode. So when we're in survival mode, as you might imagine, as we're trying to go throughout the day, our responses are hampered. They are stifled. Some responses are even suppressed because we're in survival mode. And that affects all aspects of our lives. Another impact of ACEs on the brain can be fear of trusting others. It manifests as, even though you want to trust people, you're walking around in this survival mode, so you're just not able to feel like it's safe to connect with them. Another example is that you might have difficulty regulating your emotions. You might fly off the handle when you don't want to. You might not be able to motivate yourself when you want to. You might experience depression more often than you believe is healthy. You might have memory or emotional flashbacks. Now, a memory flashback is pretty straightforward. That just means, say, I had an adverse childhood experience, and as I'm trying to work, for example, or relate to others, my memory keeps going back to this event. Like my attention keeps being pulled back to that traumatic event. An emotional flashback is a bit trickier than that. So, an emotional flashback is, and sidebar, this terminology might have been coined by, I think his name is Pete Walker, who wrote a book on CPTSD, which is complex post traumatic stress disorder. Again, I'll leave that for you in the resources section, but he talks about emotional flashbacks. Great book, by the way. You should definitely check it out. Even if you don't feel like you have or you experience all the symptoms of complex post traumatic stress disorder, it's a great book to help you understand yourself better and others in terms of how you function in the world or feel unable to function that's rooted in childhood trauma. Anyway, an emotional flashback is basically when, say, I'm in the same situation, I am trying to relate to others or another person, and I'm having an emotional response that doesn't seem to fit the situation. Say they do something that I feel disrespected by, and my response is completely over the top, unfitting, unsuitable for that situation. That's an emotional flashback. It can be an emotional flashback if, for example, you you experienced a pattern of being disrespected in your childhood. Say, for instance, someone who you were unable to have that sort of response to in your life as you were a child. Like, say, a parent had a pattern of consistently disrespecting you, treating you as not a valuable person. So, back in childhood, you were not able to have that angry response to the parent. You weren't allowed to. So, now as an adult, every time you feel even the slightest bit disrespected, you have that, you lash out. And even in instances, for example, where it's clear that the person didn't know they even disrespected you and certainly didn't intend to, but you still have that very intense response. That's an emotional flashback where, your body is just feeling triggered by the previous childhood experiences. And so it is kind of it's manifesting and a response that's not appropriate for the current situation. Another example of the impact that ACEs can have on the brain: hypervigilance. So, um, paranoia, perfectionism, hypervigilance can kind of manifest as that. If you're, feel like you're hyper aware of what's going on in your surroundings or your interactions with someone else and those sorts of things. It can also manifest as a loss of faith and hope in your situation. You just don't feel like you can do it anymore. You just don't feel like it's worth it to continue trying because it's not going to work out anyway, is what your mind is telling you. That's an impact that ACEs can have on the brain. Another is just when you have unmet needs that are driving behavior. Abraham Maslow, a psychologist, one of my favorite people to quote. His quotes are just fantastic and amazing, but he has a kind of a needs pyramid. It's called, I think, the hierarchy of needs, and I will put that in the resources section for you as well. But basically, he theorized that if we have needs that are unmet at the bottom of the pyramid, then we're not going to be able to get those higher level needs met until those base level needs are satisfied. For example, at the bottom of the pyramid: food, shelter, water, safety, warmth, I think. So, as you can imagine, if you are starving or if you are at least very hungry, and being hungry is pretty much a constant state for you, it's going to be hard to focus on the other stuff in your life that you need to do. it's going to be difficult, even if you can focus for a time, it's going to be difficult to sustain focus because you're hungry. So, for example, closer to the top of the pyramid, like the top of the pyramid is self actualization, living, in your creative freedom, living to your purpose, basically. Well, you can't do that. You can't get to that until some base level needs are satisfied. I hope that makes sense. Lack of personal worth. Well, let me go back to unmet needs driving behavior. So, when you have a higher ACE load, I just wanted to point out that even if your needs are not related to the most basic, food, shelter, water, warmth, when unmet needs are driving behavior, whatever they are, that basically means that your mind, your physiology is constantly trying to get that need satisfied, regardless of the situation that you're in. So, I want to kind of tie it into the example that I was talking about in terms of feeling disrespected. If you are a person and who feels like they're constantly being disrespected, if that's an unmet need for you, the need to be respected, then that's going to manifest itself in probably all areas of your life in some way. So, until that need to be respected, until you're able to satisfy that, and that's a whole nother topic, but until you're able to satisfy that need of to feel respected, it's going to get in the way of the things that you're trying to achieve in other areas of your life and business. Now, on to lack of personal worth. That is an example of how ACEs can impact the brain. You just have a pattern of feeling inadequate. It's very common. Also, dissociation or just withdrawing from situations, numbing from situations is very common when you've been exposed to adverse childhood experiences, and it's just another method of trying to protect the body, trying to protect itself. And there are many more, but those are a few to get us started. So, next. Oh, I've gone the wrong way again. Sorry. Why most healing work does not create sustainable change. On to that. So, as I mentioned, ACEs impact the structure of the brain and the development of the brain, the function of the brain. So, if that is the case, then this impact that ACEs have on the brain has to be taken into account by the healing work that you're doing. So, if you're working with a coach or a therapist, even a doctor, a expert, a marketing expert, whoever you're working with, if they understand that you've experienced traumas, then their program must be tailored toward your needs in that regard because your brain has been changed in structure and function. So, oftentimes, what this manifests as is that you just feel unable to kind of follow the program that you're trying to follow. Like, say, in business, if you're in a coaching program or you are in a program designed to teach you how to market your business, everything is laid out for you. You know exactly what to do, step by step. You even have templates, step by step instructions. You might have one on one support here and there. But if you have ACEs that have changed the structure of your brain, then you must work on rewiring the brain first before you can consistently follow the program that will um, lead you to success. Even if you have everything laid out for you, if the brain needs to be rewired first to be able to focus on this plan and follow through with this plan, then change isn't going to be sustainable for you. And that's the missing element in so many programs, certainly just business coaching programs across the board. They have you doing these affirmations, these vision boards, setting these goals, blah, 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 creating these 10-year plans. Okay. But if I have, for example, as we just talked about, a feeling of low self worth, I feel inadequate. That's nothing that affirmations and vision boards is going to correct for me. I have to rewire my brain first. Also, you have to be able to, first of all, you have to get in touch with how it is you're feeling and be able to regulate your emotions. So, for example, you have a plan laid out in front of you. Say it's a 12-week plan. You have to be able to motivate yourself to do the work. But you can't motivate yourself if you can't regulate your emotions, because emotional regulation is the ability to dial it up, dial it back, turn up, turn down. For what? In order to achieve your goals. So if you can't emotionally regulate, then you won't be able to be consistent with the programs that you're trying to follow. And if you don't know how you're feeling, first and foremost, then you can't regulate your feelings. I hope that makes sense. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in day 4. So that's it for today. And hopefully I can get to the right slide this time. Perfect. Okay. So remember to check out the resources where you'll see the sympathetic dominance video, the book by Pete Walker on CPTSD, and then Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And check those out. And I hope they're useful to you. I look forward to teaching you more cool stuff in day 3. Take care.